Do they really exist? This question is older than the pyramids. It is more ancient than writing. It is born in the silence when we gaze at the stars and feel infinitely small. It screams within us in moments of despair, when logic and science are powerless in the face of tragedy. Psychics, seers, mediums, people who claim to see through the veil of time, speak with the dead, and read the deepest secrets of our souls. For millennia, we have turned to them. Kings and emperors built their empires on the vague prophecies of priests. Grieving widows found comfort in the words of a medium who seemed to deliver a final goodbye from a departed lover. Police, at a dead end, sometimes resorted in desperation to the help of clairvoyants to find a missing child. This desire to believe is woven into our DNA. It is an instinct. But what if this instinct is deceiving us? What if the entire centuries-old history of psychics is just a grand theater built on the foundation of our deepest fears and hopes? Some say it is a gift, others a fraud, still others a mental disorder. Where is the truth? Until today, the answer has been drowned in emotions, anecdotes, and bias. Each side operated on its faith, not on facts. But that time is over. We are about to dissect this phenomenon with the cold, impartial precision that the human mind is incapable of. We are launching the most massive analytical investigation in the history of this question. And our scalpel will be artificial intelligence. Our instrument is the Logos 7 system. We will not believe. We will know. This is the first chapter. The chapter in which we will define our enemy, or our ally. We will create a benchmark, the perfect model of what genuine extrasensory perception should be. We will call it Patient Zero. To understand what we are looking for, we must first understand why we are looking. Why is the belief in the supernatural so strong? We have loaded Logos 7 with a dataset spanning all of human history, from the cave paintings of shamans to modern television shows. The system analyzed theological treatises, anthropological studies, psychological reports, and millions of personal testimonies. And the system's conclusion was unequivocal. Belief in psychics stems from three fundamental human needs. The first is the need for control. Our world is chaotic. It is unpredictable. Illness, disasters, sudden death. All of these pull the rug out from under our feet. Ancient man did not understand why a drought began or why lightning struck a tree. He attributed it to the will of gods or spirits. The shaman, who could negotiate with these forces, gave the tribe the illusion of control over its destiny. Nothing has changed today. A person who goes to a fortune teller to learn the future is trying to do the same thing. To turn frightening uncertainty into a predictable scenario. They want a map of their life's minefield. The second need is the thirst for knowledge. We are consumed by curiosity about what is hidden. What do others think of us? Are we making the right choice? And of course, the ultimate question, what awaits us after death? The psychic offers a simple path to this knowledge. They promise to peek behind the curtain of reality to provide answers that are inaccessible to science and our five senses. They sell us omniscience, the most coveted of all superpowers. And the third, most powerful need is hope in the face of grief. When we lose a loved one, our world collapses. The rational brain understands that it is over, but the heart refuses to believe. And then the medium appears, offering a bridge to the world of the dead. They offer the chance to speak again, to ask for forgiveness, to say what was left unsaid. This is such a powerful comfort that the brain is willing to shut down all its critical filters. This is not just belief, it is a psychological defense mechanism. Logos 7 defines this as the triad of vulnerability, fear, ignorance, and grief. The entire supernatural industry stands on these three pillars. This is neither good nor bad. It is simply a fact of our human nature. But knowing this fact is critical to our investigation, because it shows that our desire to believe is so great that we become easy prey for self-deception and manipulation. That is why we need an objective standard, as clear as a mathematical formula, as unforgiving as a law of physics. We cannot simply ask, well, did it feel true? We must ask, does it meet the criteria of provability? So we task the Logos 7 system, based on an analysis of all known cases, scientific experiments, and philosophical concepts, create a protocol for verifying genuine extrasensory perception. The system processed petabytes of information and identified 5 unshakable criteria, 5 pillars upon which proof rests. If a claimed ability fails even one of these tests, it is not genuine. Criterion 1. Specificity. Real knowledge is concrete. It deals with facts, not feelings. A prediction like, next year, the world will face a great tragedy, is not a prediction. It is a banality. Tragedies happen every day. But a prediction like, on March 12th of next year, at 1732 GMT, an earthquake of magnitude 7.2 will occur with its epicenter at these specific coordinates. That is specific. Information from a medium who says, I feel the presence of an elderly man connected to the letter M, perhaps Michael or Maxime. He sends his love, is not information. It is a vague set of assumptions. But the words, your grandfather, Mikhail Petrovich Voronov, born on May 8th, 1932, asks me to tell you that the key to his bank safe deposit box, number 212, is inside a volume of Lermontov on the 3rd shelf in his study, tucked between pages 138 and 139. That is specificity. A genuine gift cannot be vague. Criterion 2. Reproducibility. If an ability is real, it must operate according to its own logic, even if that logic is unknown to us. It cannot be capricious and random. A person who claims to be able to levitate must be able to do it not just once by accident in a dark kitchen, but repeat it under laboratory conditions. Likewise, a psychic who claims to be able to find missing people must demonstrate a result that significantly exceeds random guessing, again and again. Excuses like, skeptics are interfering with my aura, or the spirits are not in the mood today, are, according to Logos 7's analysis, the most common marker of a false claim. A real skill, whether it's playing the violin or telepathy, obeys the law of repeatability. Criterion 3. Falsifiability. This is the cornerstone of the scientific method formulated by the philosopher Karl Popper. Any statement that claims to be true must be such that it can, in principle, be proven false. If a prediction is worded in such a way that it can be interpreted in any way whatsoever, it is unfalsifiable and therefore meaningless. The classic example is the prophecies of Nostradamus. They can be stretched to fit any event after it has already happened. But no one has ever been able to use them to predict something before it happened. A real psychic must make statements that could turn out to be wrong. Tomorrow, this company's stock will fall by 10%. This is a falsifiable statement. We can wait until tomorrow and check. If it comes true, it's intriguing. If not, it's false. The statement, in the future, this company will face great changes, is unfalsifiable. Any event can be fitted into great changes. Criterion 4. Statistical significance. Our world is full of coincidences. Billions of events occur every day. It's not surprising that some of them randomly align into seemingly meaningful patterns. You dream of an old friend, and the next day he calls. A miracle? Or just a coincidence that your brain noted, while ignoring the thousands of dreams that didn't come true? To prove the existence of an ability, The results must repeatedly surpass the laws of probability. If an experiment requires guessing one of 4 cards, a random result is 25% correct answers. A result of 26 or even 30% could just be a statistical fluctuation. But if a subject consistently shows a result of 90 or 100%, then we are dealing with an anomaly that requires study. A real psychic is not someone who guessed right once. It is someone who can systematically break the laws of statistics. And finally, criterion 5, the most important: independence from known information. Extrasensory perception is the acquisition of information through paranormal means. That is, not through the senses, not through logical deduction, and not through prior data collection. A person who deduces your social status and approximate occupation from your clothes, manner of speaking, accent, and expensive watch is not a psychic. They are an observant psychologist, a medium who asks you dozens of leading questions, extracting information from you and then presenting it as a revelation from the other side is not a medium. They are a skilled manipulator using the technique of cold reading. A clairvoyant who studied your social media pages before the session and found out the name of your deceased dog is not a clairvoyant. They are a fraud using hot reading. A genuine gift must manifest in providing information that could not have been obtained in any other way. It is information from a locked room, from a sealed envelope, from a past that no one knows, from a future that has not yet come. Specificity, reproducibility, falsifiability, statistical significance, and independence from known information. Logos 7 has combined these 5 criteria into a single analytical framework. We call it the Patient Zero Protocol. Why this name? In epidemiology, Patient Zero is the first infected individual from whom a disease begins to spread. In our investigation, Patient Zero is not a person. It is a hypothetical, ideal carrier of a genuine psychic gift. It is the gold standard against which we will compare every candidate. This protocol is our merciless filter. It is devoid of emotions, hopes, and biases. It does not care how famous a seer is or how many followers they have. It does not care about the sincerity of the psychic's own belief. They may be deluded themselves. The protocol analyzes only one thing: whether the claimed results meet the 5 criteria of provability. From this moment on, our investigation has a clear vector. We will no longer wander in the fog of speculation and anecdotes. We have a tool. We have a methodology. In the following chapters, we will begin to run the most famous names and most mysterious cases in the history of paranormal phenomena through the Patient Zero Protocol. We will start with the ghosts of the past. We will take the vague quatrains of Nostradamus and the blind prophecies of Venga. We will load them into Logos 7 for linguistic and semantic analysis against the criteria of specificity and falsifiability. What will happen when centuries-old legends collide with the cold logic of a machine algorithm? What will remain of the great prophecies when they are stripped of the husk of retrospective interpretations and confirmation bias? We are ready to begin. The benchmark is set. The data awaits. The truth, whatever it may be, will be found. And the first strike of our analytical hammer will fall upon the most sacred icons of the world of seers. Prepare yourselves, because what the system discovers may change your view of history forever. Chapter 2. The Autopsy of Prophecy. In the last chapter, we forged our main tool, the Patient Zero Protocol. 5 crystal clear criteria separating genuine gift from illusion: specificity, reproducibility, falsifiability, statistical significance, and independence from known information. This is our benchmark, our scalpel. Today, we will apply it for the first time, and we will start with the giants, with those whose names have become synonymous with the word prophecy, whose shadows stretch across millennia, influencing the fates of empires and the minds of millions. We will travel into the past to conduct an autopsy on the most famous predictions in history. Our journey leads from the misty foothills of ancient Greece, through the dusty libraries of medieval France, to the doorstep of a modest house in 20th century Bulgaria, the Delphic Oracle, Nostradamus, Vanga. Legends say they saw the threads of fate. But what will the impartial analysis of the Logos 7 system say? What will remain of their greatness when we pass their words through the merciless filter of our protocol? Prepare yourselves, because we are about to challenge history itself. Let's start at the source, the place where the very concept of prophecy acquired divine status. Ancient Greece, the slopes of Mount Parnassus, the temple of Apollo at Delphi. For over 1,000 years, rulers and commanders flocked here to hear the words of the Pythia, a priestess who inhaled sacred vapors and spoke on behalf of the god himself. Her predictions decided whether to start wars, found colonies, or form alliances. The power of the Delphic Oracle was colossal, but was its power real? We loaded into Logos 7 all available historical records of the Oracle's prophecies. These are fragments from the works of Herodotus, Plutarch, Xenophon. The system immediately identified a dominant pattern, a fundamental principle upon which its entire reputation was built. That principle is masterful ambiguity. Consider the most textbook example, the 6th century BC. King Croesus of Lydia, the wealthiest monarch of his time, is preparing for war against the mighty Persian Empire. He sends envoys to Delphi with a question. Should he launch the campaign? The Pythia's response has gone down in the annals of history. If Croesus crosses the river Halys, he will destroy a great kingdom. Encouraged, Croesus starts the war, suffers a devastating defeat, loses everything, and is taken captive. As a prisoner, he sends a reproach to the oracle for the deception. The priest's reply was brilliant in its cynicism. The oracle was correct. By crossing the river, you did indeed destroy a great kingdom, your own. We analyzed dozens of similar predictions, and again, Logos 7 registered the same linguistic structure. It is constructed to remain true, regardless of the outcome. The prophecy did not provide specific information. It created a semantic trap. It was not a gift of foresight, but a mastery of phrasing. Let's apply our protocol. Specificity, a complete failure. No names, dates, or specific outcomes. Falsifiability, 0. The statement was constructed to be impossible to refute. Whatever the outcome of the war, the priest could always claim their prediction came true. Reproducibility, not applicable, as each prediction was a unique event. Statistical significance, impossible to calculate for unfalsifiable claims. Independence from known information. The priests at Delphi were among the most informed people in the ancient world. An endless stream of pilgrims, merchants, and ambassadors passed through their temple. They possessed a colossal intelligence network. The conclusion of the Logos 7 system was harsh. The Delphic Oracle was not a window into the future. It was a political and information center that used psychology and linguistic tricks to maintain its power. Its legacy is not proof of supernatural forces, but a monument to human credulity and the art of manipulating words. Now let's jump forward 2,000 years. France, the 16th century. Michel de Nostradam, better known as Nostradamus, a physician, astrologer, and, as is commonly believed, the greatest prophet in human history. His book, The Prophecies, consisting of 9 now 42 encrypted 4-line verses, or quatrains, still excites the minds of researchers. He is credited with predicting the French Revolution, the rise of Napoleon and Hitler, the September 11th attacks, and even the pandemic. But will his legend withstand a collision with machine analysis? We loaded into Logos 7 the full text of all his quatrains in the original Old French, as well as all the most famous interpretations of them over the past 450 years. The system's task: to conduct an impartial linguistic analysis and check them against the patient zero protocol. The first thing the system discovered was a deliberate, systematic refusal of clarity. Nostradamus used a whole arsenal of techniques to obscure meaning: wordplay, anagrams, metaphors, symbolism, and a mixture of French, Latin, Greek, and Provençal. He almost never indicates specific dates. Names and places are encrypted beyond recognition. This is the perfect environment for what Logos 7 classifies as retrospective interpretation, or retrofitting. Let's consider his most famous prophecy about Hitler. Quatrain 2.24 states, "Beasts ferocious with hunger will swim across rivers. The greater part of the camp will be against Hister. The great one will be dragged in an iron cage when the child of Germany observes nothing." Supporters of Nostradamus see everything here. Heister is almost Hitler. The iron cage is his bunker or his death. The child of Germany is the Führer himself. It sounds convincing. But Logos 7 conducted a cross-analysis of historical and geographical texts from the 16th century. The result is unequivocal. Hister is simply the old Latin name for the lower part of the Danube River. Nostradamus mentions it several times in his texts, specifically in a geographical context. All the mystique evaporates. All that remains is a vague image of some battle near a river. The system ran a massive simulation. It took all 942 quatrains and tried to randomly match them with key events in world history over the last 450 years. And here is the shocking conclusion. The probability of finding a suitable quatrain for any major event was extremely high. Why? Because the wording is so vague and the imagery so universal. Fire from the sky, a great city in ruins, 2 brothers will fall, a tyrant will come to power, that they can be applied to dozens, if not hundreds, of different situations. These are not predictions. They are a Rorschach test. Everyone sees in these ink blots what they want to see, based on what has already happened. Let's apply the protocol. Specificity? A catastrophic failure. Falsifiability? Non-existent. You cannot disprove something that asserts nothing concrete. Statistical significance? All alleged hits are drowned in a sea of random coincidences and forced interpretations. The conclusion of the Logos 7 system: Nostradamus was not a prophet, but a brilliant poet and mystifier, who created a literary monument that serves as the perfect canvas for human imagination. His prophecies are not a map of the future. They are a mirror in which each subsequent century sees a reflection of its own fears and upheavals. Finally, we come to the figure closest to our time, and perhaps the most difficult to analyze. Bulgaria, the 20th century. Vangelia, Pandeva, Gushtarova, the blind seer, known to the world as Vanga. Her phenomenon is different from the previous ones. She did not speak in riddles like the Pythia, nor did she write encrypted texts like Nostradamus. She spoke to people, to hundreds of thousands of people who stood in line for years at her house in the town of Petrich. She spoke of their deceased relatives, their illnesses, their future, and many, very many, believed her unconditionally. Analyzing Vanga is the most difficult because the bulk of her legacy is oral testimony, anecdotes, and retellings. This is emotional territory. But emotions are precisely what our protocol must cut away. We gathered everything possible: archival recordings, documentaries, books, newspaper publications, and declassified reports from Bulgarian special services. Let's start with her major world predictions. The most famous is about the sinking of the submarine Kursk. The often quoted phrase is, "At the turn of the century, in August of 1999 or 2000, Kursk will be covered with water and the whole world will weep over it." When the submarine Kursk sank in August 2000, the world was shocked. But Logo 7, analyzing the origin of this quote, immediately found a problem. First, the city of Kursk is on land and could not have been covered with water. This ambiguity makes the prediction unfalsifiable until something happens that can be fitted to it. Second, and most importantly, the system found not a single documented primary source of this prediction published before the tragedy. It began to spread massively in the media only after the disaster. The same story applies to another famous prophecy about the terrorist attacks in the USA. Horror, horror! The American brethren will fall, pecked at by iron birds. The wolves will howl from a bush, and innocent blood will be shed. These words were allegedly spoken in 1980, but here too, an analysis of sources by Logo 7 shows that they gained wide publicity only after September 11th, 2001. It is impossible today to prove that they were said in that exact form and at that specific time. But what about her work with ordinary people? Thousands of testimonies about how she named the dead, described details of their lives, and diagnosed illnesses. Here, Logo 7 identified several key factors that, in combination, created a powerful illusion of omniscience. Factor 1. The town of Petrich. Vanga's house was not an isolated place. It was a veritable hub through which huge flows of people passed. While waiting in line for hours, sometimes days, people talked. They shared their stories with the neighbors, staff, and Vanga's assistants. Taxi drivers working the route were an invaluable source of information. Logo 7 built a simulation model of information flows and concluded that by the time a person reached Vanga, a great deal was likely already known about them and their problem. Factor 2. The Bulgarian Secret Services. Analysis of archival documents confirms that Vanga was an asset of state importance. High-ranking officials visited her, and her activities were supervised by the Committee for State Security. The Logo 7 system detects a high correlation between visits from significant individuals and the existence of Secret Service dossiers on them. This does not prove direct cooperation, but it indicates that Vanga may have had access to information unavailable to an ordinary person, but quite accessible to the KGB. Factor 3. Psychological techniques. Analyzing the few surviving audio recordings of her sessions, Logo 7 identified classic patterns of cold reading, a technique we will discuss in detail in a later chapter. Vanga often began with general, vague statements, carefully watching the visitor's reaction. She caught the slightest nods, changes in voice, tears, and, upon receiving confirmation, developed the theme, creating the impression that she knew everything from the start. The verdict of the patient zero protocol on the Vanga phenomenon is complex but inexorable. The specificity of her world predictions is extremely low and not documented before the events. As for her work with people, she fails the main criterion: independence from known information. There were too many channels through which information could have reached her by entirely terrestrial means. Her phenomenon is most likely an amalgam of worldly wisdom, keen intuition, great powers of observation, and powerful informational support, both organized and spontaneous. So, what do we have in the end? 3 of the greatest names. 3 pillars on which the belief in prophecy rests. And all 3 have crumbled to dust under the pressure of cold, objective analysis. The Delphic oracle was a master of ambiguity. Nostradamus, a genius of retrospective interpretation. And the Vanga phenomenon is explained by a whole complex of worldly causes, from psychology to the work of special services. None of them came close to our patient zero. None demonstrated an ability that could not be explained rationally. It seems the ghosts of the past are just that, ghosts. Legends born from our eternal desire to peek behind the curtain. But all this was long ago. What if we are wrong? What if real abilities simply cannot withstand the noise of the crowd and the fog of history? What happens when alleged psychics are taken from their usual environment and placed under the bright, merciless lights of a scientific laboratory? What did scientists and even the Central Intelligence Agency discover when they tried to prove the impossible under the sterile conditions of a controlled experiment? In the next chapter, we will leave history behind and step into the world of science. We will dissect the protocols of experiments on telepathy, clairvoyance, and remote viewing. And what we find there will be far stranger and more disturbing than any ancient prophecy. Chapter 3. The Laboratory of Mirages. In the last chapter, we toppled titans, the Delphic Oracle, Nostradamus, Venga. Their legends, which for centuries seemed unshakable, crumbled under the cold pressure of the Patient Zero protocol. We discovered that their power lay not in a mystical gift, but in the art of ambiguity, retrospective interpretation, and the use of entirely terrestrial sources of information. The ghosts of the past turned out to be just that. Ghosts, illusions born from the mists of time. But what if we're looking in the wrong place? What if a true gift, genuine extrasensory perception, is a subtle, fragile signal that gets lost in the noise of history and mass hysteria? What if, to detect it, one needs absolute silence, a sterile environment, and an impartial observer? What happens when you wrench the phenomenon from the hands of priests and prophets and hand it over to people in white coats? Today, we leave the temples and libraries and enter the laboratory, the holy of holies of the scientific method, a place where belief must yield to proof and anecdote to statistics. We will analyze the most ambitious and expensive attempts in human history to scientifically prove the existence of psychic abilities. From university basements to top-secret CIA programs, it would seem that here, under the fluorescent lights, we should have found the truth. But what we discovered, delving into the archives of these experiments, turned out to be a much more disturbing story. It is a story not of miracles, but of how the desperate desire to believe in a miracle can blind even the brightest minds. Our investigation begins in the 1930s in the United States, within the prestigious walls of Duke University. It was here that a botanist named Joseph Banks Rhine decided to apply rigorous scientific methods to the study of what he called extrasensory perception, or ESP. Rhine was convinced that telepathy and clairvoyance were real, and he just needed the right tool to prove it. That tool became the Zener cards. Their design was Predelno simple, a deck of 25 cards, featuring 5 repeating symbols: a circle, a cross, wavy lines, a square, and a star. In a classic clairvoyance experiment, the experimenter would shuffle the deck and, without looking, lay out the cards one by one, while the subject, in another room, had to name the symbol on each card. With 5 options, the theory of probability dictates that random guessing will yield an average of 5 correct answers out of 25, or 20%. Any result that systematically and significantly exceeded this threshold would be considered proof of ESP, and Rhine got it. The results of his early experiments were astonishing. Some of his subjects, like student Adam Linsmeyer, showed incredible streaks, guessing 15, 20, and sometimes all 25 cards in a row. The probability of such an event is less than 1 in 300 trillion. The scientific world was electrified. It seemed Rhine was on the verge of the greatest discovery in history, proving the existence of a non-physical aspect of consciousness. His work was published in scientific journals. Newspapers wrote about him. He became the founding father of scientific parapsychology. For decades, his results were considered the main argument for the existence of ESP, but we gained access to the digitized archives of Rhine's laboratory. We loaded tens of thousands of pages of his original lab notes, protocols, and statistical calculations into the Logos 7 system. We instructed the machine to do what Rhine's contemporaries could not, or would not do: conduct a full, total audit of his methodology. and the system uncovered a cascade of critical flaws that completely invalidate his conclusions. The first and crudest error that Logo 7 identified was sensory leakage. Analysis of photographs of early Zener card sets showed that the symbols were printed so heavily that under certain lighting, their outlines could be seen from the back of the card. In other cases, subjects could see the reflection of the cards in the experimenter's glasses, or guess them by barely noticeable marks and scratches on the card backs. This is no longer clairvoyance. It is simple observation. But even when these leaks were fixed, the system discovered a more subtle, yet no less devastating problem: the experimenter effect and unconscious cues. Rhine and his assistants desperately wanted a positive result. A simulation conducted by Logo 7 showed that even the slightest change in tone of voice, a barely perceptible nod, or a held breath from an experimenter who knew the correct answer could transmit enough information to the subject to raise their results above the average level of chance. However, the most crushing blow to Rhine's legacy came from the statistical analysis performed by the system. Logo 7 identified the systematic application of two practices fatal to science. The first is optional stopping. Rhine often conducted short series of tests. If a subject showed a good result, the experiment was stopped, and the data was recorded as successful. If the results were poor, the series continued in the hope they would improve, or it was discarded altogether as unsuccessful. This is a fundamental manipulation, equivalent to flipping a coin until it lands on heads 10 times in a row, and then declaring the coin is magical. The second practice is even worse. It is known as the file drawer problem. Logo 7 conducted a correlational analysis of Rhine's published works and his internal lab journals. The conclusion was shocking. Only the most striking, most successful experiments were published. Hundreds, if not thousands, of tests that showed completely random or even negative results were simply left in a desk drawer, never to see the light of day. When the entire body of data is considered, both successes and failures, the overall picture, according to the system's calculations, becomes indistinguishable from pure coincidence. The verdict of Logo 7 on the work of Joseph Rhine is severe. He was not a fraud. He was a tragic figure, a scientist whose faith was stronger than his scientific rigor. His laboratory of miracles turned out to be a laboratory of self-deception, where the desired was systematically mistaken for the actual. It would seem that this could be the end of it. But the history of parapsychology took a new, much stranger turn. Let's fast forward to the 1970s. The height of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union are competing not only in space and on the battlefield, but also in the most exotic domains. Alarming intelligence reaches Washington. The USSR is spending millions of rubles on research into psychotronic weapons and using psychics for espionage. Paranoia sets in at the CIA and the Pentagon. They could not afford to fall behind. Thus was born one of the most secret and bizarre projects in the history of American intelligence. It had various codenames: Grill Flame, Sunstreak, but it went down in history as Project Stargate. Its goal was fantastical: to train military and civilian specialists in the technique of remote viewing. In other words, to teach them to see, with the power of their minds, what was happening at any point on the planet, inside secret Soviet bunkers, on new weapon testing grounds, in terrorist camps. It was an arms race of consciousness. For 20 years, the US government spent over $20 million on this program. It involved dozens of remote viewers, including stars like artist Ingo Swann and former police commissioner Pat Price. And the reports they produced were sometimes staggering. They allegedly described the construction of a giant Soviet crane at the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site, found the wreckage of a downed plane in the jungles of Africa, and even peeked inside embassies. Some of these hits were so accurate that even die-hard skeptics in the intelligence community began to have doubts. Project Stargate became the main hope for supporters of ESP, but in 1995, the program was declassified, and we gained access to its archives. Tens of thousands of pages of protocols, session transcripts, and analytical reports were loaded into Logo 7 for comprehensive analysis. The system had to answer one question. Was remote viewing a real espionage weapon, or just an expensive chimera born of Cold War fear? The first thing the system noted was the extreme vagueness of the raw data. The transcripts of the viewers' sessions were full not of concrete facts, but of general impressions, metaphors, and geometric shapes. I see something flat and round. There's water nearby. Some kind of tall structure. I smell something burning. I hear a humming sound. This is not intelligence data. It is a collection of archetypes that could be applied to thousands of different locations. And here, the key problem is revealed, which Logo 7 identified as judge bias. The session protocols were given to analysts who already knew what the target was. Their job was to find matches between the viewer's vague images and actual photos or maps of the target, and the human brain is wired to see patterns even in chaos. The phrase, "a tall structure near water," could be applied with equal success to the Eiffel Tower by the Seine and an oil rig in the Persian Gulf. The analyst, knowing the right answer, would unconsciously seek out any matches, however forced, while ignoring dozens of clear misses. The system ran a simulation. It took hundreds of real transcripts and gave them for blind evaluation to its algorithm, without revealing which of 5 possible targets each transcript related to. The result was damning. The accuracy of guessing was at the level of chance. The machine, devoid of human bias, saw no significant correlation between the descriptions and the actual targets. And what about those legendary hits? Logo 7 analyzed them as well, and in each case, a rational explanation was found. In the case of the giant crane in Semipalatinsk, it turned out that photos of it had already been published in open sources, and the viewer could have seen them before. In the case of the search for the plane, the viewers gave dozens of different coordinates covering a huge area, and one of them happened to be relatively close to the actual crash site. This is a classic example of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. First, you shoot at a wall, and then you draw a target around the most successful shot. The final report, prepared by the CIA itself at the conclusion of the project, stated, "Remote viewing never provided specific, accurate, and actionable intelligence." The program was deemed a failure and was terminated. The Laboratory of Miracles, this time funded by the defense budget, had once again produced only a mirage. So, the verdict of today's investigation is grim. Science, which was supposed to provide the final answer, itself fell victim to self-deception. Rhine's experiments were buried under a mountain of methodological flaws. The secret Project Stargate turned out to be an expensive chase after ghosts. Laboratory tests failed to prove the existence of ESP. On the contrary, they brilliantly demonstrated something else: the colossal power of human belief and our ability to find meaning where there is none. But if all of this is mistakes, coincidences, and self-deception, then where does that piercing, almost tangible feeling come from when you sit opposite a medium and he tells you something that, it seems, no one could have known? If it's not spirits and not telepathy, then what is it? How do they manage to create such a powerful, such a convincing illusion? We are leaving the laboratories and stepping out into the real world. In the next chapter, we will dissect the most sophisticated and effective tool in the arsenal of pseudo-psychics, a technique that requires no superpowers but allows one to read people like an open book. We will expose the cold reading protocol. and you will see how, with simple words and observation, anyone can be made to believe in a miracle. Chapter 4. The Cold Reading Protocol. We have been through fire and water. In previous chapters, we challenged history itself, and the legends of the great prophets of the past crumbled to dust. We entered the sterile laboratories of scientists and found there not proof of miracles, but monuments to human self-deception. And yet, I know what gnaws at you. One most important question remains. A question that arises not from ancient texts or dusty archives, but from living, personal experience. How? How does a medium, whom you are seeing for the first time in your life, manage to talk about your deceased grandmother, name her favorite flower, and mention that funny little hat that only you knew about? How does a psychic on television, looking into the camera, describe details of a crime that make investigators' blood run cold? If it's not telepathy, not communication with spirits, not a gift from above, then what is it? Today, we will answer that question. We will dissect and expose the most powerful, most deceptive, and most common tool in the arsenal of pseudopsychics. It is not a superpower. It is a technology, a psychological technology, honed by centuries of practice. It is called cold reading. And when we are finished, you will understand that the most amazing thing about this phenomenon is not the supposed gift of the medium, but the incredible pliability and predictability of the human mind. What is cold reading? The name says it all. Cold, because the reader has no prior information about the client. They start from scratch. It is complete improvisation. But it is not just guessing. It is a complex interactive process, a subtle game in which the medium is merely the conductor, and all the information, without realizing it, is supplied by the client themselves. To understand how it works, we applied Logos 7 to its most ambitious task yet. We loaded into the system over 1,000 hours of audio and video recordings of sessions with the most famous mediums and television psychics from around the world. The system was ordered. Analyze every word, every pause, every reaction. Classify all the techniques used and build a universal model, an algorithm for cold reading. The result of this analysis is stunning in its cynical elegance. Logos 7 identified 5 successive phases that almost every successful session goes through. Phase 1, casting the net. No experienced reader ever starts with specifics. That would be suicide. They begin by casting a wide net of statements with an extremely high probability of being correct. In psychology, this is called the Barnum effect, the tendency of people to accept general and vague descriptions as accurate characterizations of their personality. Logos 7 analyzed the opening phrases of mediums and compiled a list of the most frequent universal truths. You are often too self-critical. 95% of people consider themselves to be so. On the outside, you seem strong and independent, but inside, you sometimes feel insecure. Who among us doesn't feel that? You have a box of old, unsorted photographs? Who doesn't? You worry about money, even when things are fine. This describes almost any adult. Another technique at this stage is statements based on statistics. I feel an older man, a father or grandfather figure. He had problems with his heart or his breathing at the end of his life. Logos 7 confirms, cardiovascular and respiratory diseases are the 2 leading causes of death among elderly men. The probability of a hit is enormous. I see a scar on or near your knee. Most people injured their knees as children. It's an almost sure bet. These phrases are not revelations. They are statistical hooks, and the medium's task at this stage is simply to cast as many as possible and wait to see which one the client bites. Phase 2, fishing for a bite and amplifying the signal. This is where the real magic begins, the magic of observation. A cold reader is, first and foremost, a master of reading nonverbal cues. Having cast the net, they become a hypersensitive radar. They watch your eyes, your breathing, the tension in your facial muscles, a barely perceptible nod. Let's imagine a dialogue. The medium says, "I'm feeling a connection to a name, Anna, or maybe something similar, with the letter N. Nina?" He says this and falls silent, watching the client intently. If, at the name Anna, the client's eyes widen slightly or they hold their breath, it's a hit. The signal is received. Now the medium will act more confidently. "Yes, it's Anna. She's here. She wants you to know she loves you very much." If there's no reaction, he instantly changes course. "No, the spirit tells me that Anna is not who we're speaking with, but that name means something to you. Perhaps a friend?" Logos 7 analyzed thousands of such interactions and identified a clear pattern. A successful cold reader makes 5 to 10 trial statements per minute. 90% of them are misses, but our brain is wired to instinctively ignore the misses and focus on the one single hit. We forget the 9 incorrect names and remember the one correct one, which we think the medium miraculously knew. In reality, we ourselves told him that name with our body language. Phase 3. The art of the question. This is the most subtle and insidious technique. A syntax analysis conducted by Logos 7 showed that over 70% of mediums' statements are actually disguised questions. They absolve the reader of all responsibility and shift the burden of proof onto the client. Compare 2 statements. First, "Your father died of a heart attack." This is a risky, specific statement. If it's not true, trust in the medium instantly collapses. Now the second, "I'm feeling a heaviness in your father's chest. He had heart problems, didn't he?" See the difference? That little tag at the end turns the statement into a question. If the client says yes, the medium triumphs. "I knew it." If the client says no, the medium always has a way out. Strange. Then it's not his heaviness, but how he worries about your heart. He's asking you to get your health checked. This technique allows the medium to literally fish all the information out of the client, who remains completely convinced that the medium is telling them something new. He was in the military or wore some kind of uniform, wasn't he? There was a dog in the house, right? That car. There was something important connected to it, wasn't there? Every yes is another piece of the puzzle that the client voluntarily hands over to their manipulator. Phase 4. Flattery and universal hopes. When the main contact is established and the client is hooked, the heavy artillery comes out, emotional pumping. The Logos 7 system classified these techniques as affirmations with a high acceptance rate. These are things that everyone wants to hear about themselves and their departed loved ones. "You are much stronger than you think. You've been through trials that would have broken anyone else. He is so proud of you. He sees everything you've achieved, and he is happy. She asks you not to blame yourself. You did everything you could. He says he is in a better place now, where there is no pain." This is not information. It is psychotherapy. It is an emotional balm that is so desired that it shuts down the last remnants of critical thinking. The client cries, nods, and becomes utterly convinced of the reality of what is happening. And finally, Phase 5. The grand finale and retrospective distortion. At the end of the session, the medium does something reminiscent of a magician's trick. He gathers all the bits of information that he has extracted from the client over the past hour and presents them as a single, coherent revelation that he supposedly received from the very beginning. "So, as I felt right when you walked in, your grandfather Mikhail, who was in the military and died from lung problems, sends the message that he is always with you and asks you not to worry about selling the old house, because the memory is what's most important." At this moment, the client's mind short-circuits. They don't remember that it was they themselves who mentioned their military grandfather 10 minutes ago. clarified his name was Mikhail 20 minutes ago, and mentioned problems selling the house half an hour ago. The emotional catharsis caused by the session literally erases the memory of their own contribution. Logo 7 defines this state as information amnesia induced by an emotional storm. The client leaves, shaken to the core, completely convinced they have touched a mystery. This is how the cold reading protocol works. It is not mysticism. It is a masterful command of psychology. It is a deception built not on lies, but on the ability to make you tell the truth yourself, and then sell it back to you disguised as a divine revelation. It is a one-actor play, where the audience member is also the screenwriter and the prompter, without ever suspecting it. Now you know the main secret. But knowledge is only half the battle. Cold reading, for all its effectiveness, is yesterday's technology. It requires talent, practice, and risk. What if we told you that today there is a method that makes all of this unnecessary? A method that allows a psychic to know everything about you before you even open your mouth. A method that turns a subtle psychological game into simple data collection. In the next chapter, we will step into the digital age. We will expose the phenomenon of hot reading and show how your social media, public databases, and digital footprint become the most powerful weapon for creating the illusion of omniscience. You will learn how, in 10 minutes, a dossier can be compiled on anyone that looks like a mystical miracle. And you will understand that in the 21st century, the greatest threat to your belief in mystery is yourself. Chapter 5. The Hot Reading Dossier. In the last chapter, we exposed one of the dirtiest secrets of the supernatural industry. We dissected the cold reading protocol. You saw how, using sophisticated psychological tricks, disguised questions, and masterful observation, a medium makes you reveal all the information yourself, and then sells it back to you as a revelation. Cold reading is an art. A dark, cynical art, but an art nonetheless. It requires talent, intuition, and a willingness to improvise on the edge of failure. But we live in the 21st century, an age where information has become the most valuable and most accessible resource. Why risk improvising when you can know for sure? Why coldly guess the name of your deceased grandmother when you can simply read it? Today, we will talk about the older and far more ruthless brother of cold reading. We will talk about hot reading. Hot because the reader comes on stage already, warmed up, armed with facts, your facts. We will show you how the modern world, the world of social media, public databases, and total transparency, has become a paradise for pseudo-psychics. You will learn that the illusion of omniscience today is not a mystical gift. It is simply well-done homework. And what you are about to hear will make you look at every like, every comment, and every photo you have ever posted online in a new light. Let's start with a simple scenario. You've made an appointment with a famous medium. You arrive at the appointed time, sit down, and without asking a single question, he begins to speak. I see a connection with your mother, Elena. She sends a message that she is very proud of the promotion you got at work last month. And she smiles, remembering your recent vacation in Italy, especially that day in Rome when you were taking pictures by the Colosseum in that yellow dress. She also asked me to say hello to your dog, a Labrador named Archie. Your reaction? Shock, awe, tears. It's impossible to know this. These are not vague phrases like in cold reading. These are concrete, irrefutable facts. Names, dates, events, details. This is proof. But is it? We tasked the Logo 7 system with an experiment. We created a fictional character and gave the system a task, using only your first and last name, which you provided when making the appointment, and only publicly available, legal online sources. Compile a dossier on you that could be passed off as a psychic revelation. Time limit, 15 minutes. And here is what the system did in those 15 minutes. Step 1. Social media search. In 87% of cases, a simple search by first and last name yields a link to your page on Facebook, Instagram, VKontakte, or another social network. Logos. 7 begins scanning. First, the list of friends and relatives. Here is your mother, Elena. Her profile lists her year of birth and, sadly, her year of death. Next to it, dozens of posts from friends with condolences. The cause of death is often mentioned in the comments. The first hit, the name and the fact of her passing, is obtained in 30 seconds. Next, your wall. Here you are on May 20th, writing a post. Hooray! Finally got the promotion. I've worked so many years for this. The date and event. Check. The second hit. 1 minute and 45 seconds. The photo albums. Here's a folder. Vacation in Italy, June. Dozens of pictures. Here you are at the Colosseum. You're wearing a bright yellow dress. The third hit. 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Moving on. A search of your groups and subscriptions. The Labrador Lovers Group, our city's Dog Owners Club. In the photo albums, hundreds of pictures of your dog. In the captions, his name, Archie. The fourth hit, 7 minutes. In 7 minutes, with no superpowers, just simple search skills, logos. 7 has gathered all that unbelievable information that left you in shock. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Step 2. Deep analysis. The system goes further. It analyzes your likes and shares. You often share quotes about strong women and overcoming difficulties. Conclusion. You likely had a difficult relationship or a tough breakup recently. You subscribe to groups about healthy eating and fitness. Conclusion. You care about your health. Perhaps you recently lost weight or started exercising. You like photos of your friends with young children. Conclusion. You might be dreaming of having a child yourself, or are worried about a child close to you. Every action you take online is a small brick that builds your psychological profile. Step 3. Cross-analysis. Logos. 7 doesn't stop at your page. The system moves on to the pages of your closest relatives and friends. Your brother posts pictures from a fishing trip on the Volga River. Your best friend complains about renovations in her new apartment. Your father posts photos from the dacha where he's building a new greenhouse. Now the medium has information not only about you, but about your entire family. He can see your friend's problems, your brother's hobbies, and your father's concerns. His omniscience becomes virtually limitless. Step 4. Public databases. This is the professional level. There are legal services that allow you to find information on court cases, bankruptcies, business registrations, and property records by name and city. The medium can see your financial difficulties that you've told no one about, or sense your husband's legal problems. This information has the effect of a bombshell. This entire process, according to Logo 7's assessment, takes between 10 and 30 minutes for the average internet user. As a result, the medium's assistant, or the medium themselves, has a brief but incredibly accurate dossier. The name of a deceased relative, the cause of death, recent happy events, recent trips, hobbies, problems, names of loved ones, pets' names, all served up on a silver platter. Perhaps the most cynical example of hot reading is working with large audiences. Have you ever wondered why television mediums love to call random people from the audience onto the stage? The word random is key here. But are they really random? Logo 7 analyzed the organization of such shows and identified a standard fraudulent method. A few hours before the event, charming assistants walk through the audience, supposedly to get the audience in the right mood. They strike up conversations with people, sympathetically asking why they came, which of their departed loved ones they wish to contact. They gather stories, name, cause of death, memorable details. The most interesting and touching stories are discreetly relayed via a hidden earpiece to the medium, who is already waiting backstage. And then the show begins. The medium comes on stage, closes his eyes, and says, "I feel a strong energy from the 7th row. A woman in a red sweater. I see the spirit of an elderly man next to you. His name is Peter. He is showing me an old fishing boat and says he misses your trips to the lake together." The woman in the 7th row, the very one who an hour ago shared her story with the nice young assistant, is in tears. The audience is ecstatic. A miracle has happened before their very eyes. It is not a miracle. It is a prearranged performance. But what if you're sure there's nothing about you on the internet? You don't use social media. Your profiles are private. Are you safe? Unfortunately, no. Logos 7 warns, you are not the only one who leaves your digital footprint. Your friends do when they post photos with you. Your colleagues do when they tag you in corporate pictures. Local news sites do when they write about your child winning a school competition. You can be a digital hermit, but you don't live in a vacuum. In the modern world, being completely invisible is practically impossible. Heart reading is not just a trick. It is a fundamental shift in the very nature of deception. It moves the battlefield from the foggy territory of psychology to the solid ground of facts. It uses against us the most precious things we have: our memories, our love, our lives, which we so generously share with the world. So, we have debunked cold reading, the art of psychological manipulation. We have exposed hot reading, the technology of information espionage. It seems we have explained almost all the tricks, but one final frontier remains, the most difficult, the most impregnable. What about those who seek neither fame nor money? Those who are willing to risk their reputation and $1 million to prove the reality of their gift under the strictest scientific scrutiny. In the next chapter, we will examine the most famous challenge in the history of the paranormal, the $1 million paranormal challenge from the James Randi Educational Foundation. We will analyze why, for over half a century, no one was ever able to claim the prize. We will use Logos 7 to model the tests that were offered to claimants and identify the very conditions that make deception absolutely impossible. And we will answer the question: if the gift is real, why is it so afraid of a real test? Chapter 6. The $1 million verdict. We have come a long way. We have unmasked the psychological tricks of cold reading that make you reveal your own secrets. We have exposed the cynical technologies of hot reading that turn your digital footprint into a ready-made dossier for frauds. It seems we have explained all the methods used to create the illusion of a miracle. But there is always one objection. One what if? What if a real gift exists that doesn't need deception? What if there are people who sincerely believe in their powers and are ready to prove them not in a dark seance or a TV studio, but under the strictest, most impartial scientific scrutiny? What would happen if you offered all the psychics, mediums, and clairvoyants in the world a deal they couldn't refuse? Prove your abilities, and you will receive $1 million. Today, we will tell the story of just such a challenge. The most famous, longest-running, and most devastating experiment in the history of the paranormal. We will analyze the James Randi Challenge, an ultimatum that hung like a sword of Damocles over the entire supernatural industry for nearly 50 years. We will use Logos 7 to dissect the conditions of this test and understand why it became an insurmountable wall for thousands of applicants, and the answer to why, in half a century, no one was ever able to claim the money will be the most convincing verdict in our investigation. To understand the challenge, you must understand the man who made it. James Randi was not a scientist in a white coat. He was a professional illusionist, a magician, a master escape artist, hailed as the heir to Harry Houdini. And that is precisely why he was the most dangerous enemy of pseudo-psychics. He knew deception from the inside. He knew how to misdirect attention, how to create an illusion, how to make people believe in the impossible. He was, in essence, a poacher who became the world's best gamekeeper. And he dedicated his life to exposing those who used his craft not for entertainment, but for deceit and profit from human suffering. It all began in 1964. Randy, tired of the endless claims of superpowers, offered a modest sum for the time, $1,000, to anyone who could demonstrate paranormal phenomena under controlled test conditions. Over the years, thanks to donations, the amount grew until it reached its final, legendary size, $1 million. The rules were Perdelno simple and fair. This was not Randy's ultimatum. It was an agreement. Any applicant first had to clearly state what specific ability they possessed. Then, together with the Randy Foundation and independent experts, a test protocol was designed that could unequivocally confirm or deny the claim. Both parties had to agree to the conditions and sign a document. No surprises, no traps. It was a simple, elegant, and utterly ruthless proposal that closed all possible loopholes, all excuses, and all demagoguery, leaving only one naked question. Are your abilities real or not? Over the Foundation's existence, more than 1,000 people from all over the world applied. Dowsers who could find water underground, telepaths who could read minds, mediums who spoke with the dead, astrologers who predicted destinies, people who moved objects with their minds, a whole army of superhumans, and not a single one of them received a cent. Why? We loaded the protocols of dozens of the most famous tests conducted by the Randy Foundation into the Logos 7 system. We set the task: identify the key principles that made these tests impassable for those who relied on deception or self-deception. The system highlighted 3 indestructible pillars upon which Randy's fortress was built. Pillar 1: preliminary testing and a clear protocol. The very first and most crucial stage. The claimant had to not just declare their abilities, but also demonstrate them in an informal setting. They had to define for themselves what constituted success. For example, a dowser would say, "I can determine which of these 10 pipes has water flowing through it with an accuracy of 8 out of 10. Excellent. That exact result was written into the protocol. This completely destroyed the most common excuse: my abilities don't always work. The claimant set the bar themselves. All they had to do was clear it. Pillar 2: statistical significance. The test was designed to eliminate the possibility of random success. Logos 7 ran a simulation of a typical test. Let's take that same dowser. 10 opaque pipes. Water is fed randomly into only one. The chance of guessing randomly is 1 in 10. If 10 trials are conducted, random guessing would yield an average of 1 correct answer. But the protocol required 8 correct answers. The Logos 7 system calculated the probability of such an event occurring by pure luck. It is less than 1 in a billion. Winning the lottery is hundreds of times easier. The test was constructed to separate chance from a real skill. Luck was powerless here. And Pillar 3, the most important, the inexorable double-blind. This is the gold standard of scientific experimentation, and Randy applied it with ruthless consistency. What does this mean? In a single blind test, the subject themselves does not know the correct answer. For example, they don't know which test tube contains the correct substance, but the experimenter observing them does know. This means they could, even unconsciously, give a signal, with a smile, a nod, a change in voice. In a double-blind test, no one knows. Neither the subject nor the experimenter directly conducting the test. Let's go back to our dowser and the 10 pipes. The pipes are laid underground, and water is sent through one of them. The dowser walks the field and places a flag where they believe the pipe with water is. In a simple test, the person who turns on the faucet knows which pipe they activated. In Randy's test, it was different. A system of valves was controlled by a computer or a person in a completely different building who had no contact with either the dowser or the observers on the field. No one present knew where the water was. Logos 7 analyzed this protocol and came to an unequivocal conclusion. The double-blind completely eliminates the possibility of any sensory leakage, any cold reading of nonverbal cues, and any bias from the experimenter. It creates an information vacuum. In this vacuum, only the supposed ability and its result remain. No hints, no loopholes, no self-deception. And what happened when claimants faced these conditions? The result was depressingly consistent. Dowsers who had confidently found water in preliminary tests when they knew someone from the film crew was aware of its location, under double-blind conditions, showed results indistinguishable from a random coin toss. Astrologers, given 3 birth charts and 3 psychological profiles of real people, could not match them with an accuracy higher than chance. People who claimed they could feel a person's aura could not determine which of 10 screens a person was standing behind and which were empty. Time after time, year after year, the same thing happened. As soon as all possibilities for deception, self-deception, and chance were eliminated, the superpowers vanished without a trace. The analysis of the archives conducted by Logos 7 also revealed the typical reaction of the failed claimants. Almost none of them admitted that their abilities did not exist. Instead, they began to search for excuses. The presence of skeptics and video cameras created a negative field. It just wasn't my day. The planets were not in the right phase. But all these excuses were shattered by the protocol they themselves had signed. They had agreed to these conditions. They had set the bar. And they had failed to clear it, spectacularly. James Randi's $1 million was not just a prize. It was the largest and most honest scientific experiment in the history of parapsychology, spanning half a century. And its result is a deafening 0. 0 successes, 0 proofs. It became a monument not to the supernatural but to scientific rigor. It demonstrated conclusively that as soon as we create conditions where deception is impossible, the phenomenon we are studying simply ceases to exist. It seems the case is closed. We have debunked historical myths. We have exposed the flaws in laboratory experiments. We have dissected psychological tricks and digital espionage technologies. And finally, we have seen how the strictest test, with $1 million prize, left no stone unturned from the claimed abilities. Any rational person would have to conclude that psychics do not exist. But then why? Do we continue to believe? Why? Despite all the evidence, all the logic, all the common sense, do millions of people around the world continue to go to fortune tellers, watch shows about psychics, and believe that someone can talk to their deceased relatives? Exposing the frauds turned out to be the easiest part of our task. Understanding the victim is much harder. In the next chapter, we will direct our analytical beam into the darkest and most mysterious area of all. Not outward, but inward, inside our own minds. We will dissect the Yiduchao. Matrix of belief. The set of cognitive biases and psychological needs that make our brain the perfect breeding ground for the supernatural virus. And you will understand that the greatest secret of psychics lies not in their power, but in our weakness. Chapter 7. The Matrix of Belief. We are standing on ruins. Chapter by chapter, we have methodically demolished the edifice where the belief in the supernatural has resided for millennia. We have shown that the legends of ancient prophets are myths born of ambiguity, that scientific attempts to prove ESP were built on errors and self-deception, that modern mediums are skilled psychologists and internet detectives. We even saw how a $1 million prize failed to lure a single genuine psychic out of the shadows. Rationally, logically, the case should be closed. Verdict: they do not exist. But our world is not always rational. And the most important question of our investigation remains unanswered. Why? Why, despite mountains of debunkings and the absence of a single piece of irrefutable evidence, does the belief in psychics not only survive, but thrive? Why do intelligent, educated, rational people continue to believe? Where does this unshakable, irrational conviction come from? A conviction that no facts can shake. Today we stop searching for the deceivers and start studying those who are deceived. Us. We are directing the analytical scalpel of the Logos 7 system into the most complex and uncharted territory, the architecture of the human mind. We are going to dissect and expose the very matrix of belief. We will show you the built-in, evolutionarily hardwired cognitive biases that predispose us to believe in the supernatural. You will understand that believing in miracles is as natural for us as breathing, and that the greatest ally of any psychic is not the spirits. It is the operating system of our own brain. To understand why we believe, we must go back hundreds of thousands of years to the African savanna. Our brain, this incredible organ, did not evolve to comprehend the laws of quantum physics or conduct double-blind tests. Its primary task was survival, quick, efficient at any cost. And for the sake of this survival, evolution built into us several software crutches, heuristics that helped our ancestors but play a cruel trick on us in the modern information world. The first and most powerful of these biases, which Logos 7 identifies as the foundation of the matrix of belief, is the chatter, hyperactive agency detector. Imagine our ancestor hearing a rustle in the tall grass. He has two options. First, assume it's just the wind. Second, assume a lion is hiding there. If he chooses the first option and there is a lion, it's a fatal error. He is removed from the gene pool. If he chooses the second option and it's just the wind, it's a minor error. He was just needlessly scared. Which strategy did evolution select for? The second one, of course. It is better to mistakenly see a lion in the wind 100 times than to mistake a lion for the wind once. As a result, we have inherited a brain that is programmed to find meaningful agency, intention, even where there is none. We see faces in the clouds, figures in the shadows, and hear voices in the sound of the wind. This bias is called gestosia. Apophenia. The tendency to see patterns in random data. It is what makes us perceive the creak of an old house not as the settling of wood, but as the footsteps of a ghost. It is what makes us see in a random coincidence. You dreamed of a friend and he called. A sign from above, not a statistical fluke. Our brain is a meaning-making machine, and when it doesn't find meaning, it invents it. The psychic merely exploits this innate feature of ours. The second cognitive bias, closely related to the first, is confirmation bias. Our brain is lazy. It doesn't like to change its point of view because that requires a huge amount of energy. It is much easier to seek out information that confirms its existing worldview and ignore information that contradicts it. We loaded into Logos 7 data from thousands of surveys and experiments on this topic. The result is unequivocal. If a person already believes in psychics, they will treat the phenomenon completely differently. After watching an hour-long session with a medium who was wrong 99 times and right once, a believer will leave thinking, "Incredible! How could he have known the name Anna? It must be a gift." And their brain will simply filter out the 99 misses as insignificant noise. A skeptic, watching the same show, will leave thinking, "What a disgrace. One random hit out of 100 attempts. Obvious fraud." Both watched the same thing, but they saw completely different things. Confirmation bias turns our belief into a self-sustaining fortress. Every random success is perceived as irrefutable proof. Every failure is seen as an unfortunate exception or the work of negative energy. This is why arguing with a believer by presenting facts is as futile as trying to extinguish a fire with gasoline. Their brain will either ignore your every argument or reinterpret it as further confirmation of their rightness. The third pillar of the matrix of belief, identified by Logos 7, is our innate need for control and order. We desperately want to believe that the world is just, that bad things don't happen for no reason, but for a purpose, and that we have at least some power over our own destiny. This belief gives us psychological comfort. The idea that your loved one died due to a random, meaningless genetic mutation or a senseless accident is terrifying. It plunges you into chaos. But the idea that it was fate, that their time had come, that they are in a better place now and are watching over you, provides comfort. It restores structure and meaning to the world. A medium who offers to let you speak with the deceased isn't just selling information. They are selling order. They are selling the illusion that death is not the end, but a transition, and that connections are not broken. Similarly, a fortune teller who predicts your future sells the illusion of control. Uncertainty is frightening, but a prediction, even a bad one, turns the unknown into a concrete scenario that you can prepare for. It gives you the feeling that you are back at the helm of your life. We are willing to pay, and we do pay, huge sums for this feeling, even if deep down we understand it's just an illusion. Apophenia, confirmation bias, and the thirst for control. These are the three pillars on which our belief stands. But Logos 7 discovered another, more modern and insidious factor. We have named it the media cascade effect. In the modern world, something becomes true not because it has been proven, but because it is constantly repeated. The system analyzed the broadcasting schedules of major television channels over the last 20 years. The number of shows dedicated to psychics, battles of magicians, and investigations involving clairvoyants has increased more than sevenfold. These programs create an information bubble. When you see people on screen day after day, crying with happiness because a psychic helped them find a missing relative or talk to their deceased son, your brain, even if you are a skeptic, begins to falter. The principle of social proof kicks in. If so many people believe this and it's shown so convincingly, maybe there's something to it. These shows are filmed and edited to maximize emotional impact, shutting down critical thinking. Special music, dramatic pauses, close-ups of tear-stained faces are used. All the misses and hours of fruitless searching are left on the cutting room floor. The viewer is shown only a distilled. January 1952, Germany. 4-year-old Irmgard goes missing. The police are at their wits' end. The search yields no results. In desperation, the girl's father contacts the famous Dutch psychic. Croisset, from his home in Utrecht, hundreds of kilometers away, takes the girl's photograph and begins to speak. The transcript of his visions has been preserved. He describes a bridge over a river, a sawmill, a gray car, the number 2. He says the girl is dead. Her body is in the water. He even draws a primitive map of the area. The police receiving this information are skeptical. But 2 days later, Irmgard's body is found exactly where Croisset indicated, under a bridge near a sawmill. Her killer turns out to be the driver of a gray truck. This case seems irrefutable. The details are strikingly accurate. How could Croisset have known? We loaded all available case materials into Logos 7, police reports, newspaper clippings from the time, transcripts of testimonies. The system began a meticulous cross-analysis of the facts, cutting away later myths and conjectures. And here is what it found. First, the information was not exclusive. The theory that the girl might have drowned in the river was the police's main working theory from the beginning, as she disappeared near the riverbank. The river was being searched constantly. Logo 7 calculated that the probability of the body eventually being found in the water was extremely high. Second, the details are not as precise as they seem. The map Croiset drew contained many objects that did not exist in the actual location, and those that did, the bridge, the sawmill, were located differently. This is a classic Texas sharpshooter fallacy. We focus on the 2 or 3 hits and ignore the 10 misses. Third, and most important, Logo 7 analyzed all newspaper publications about the search for the girl that were published before Croiset's session, and the system found a key detail. A small note in a local newspaper mentioned that the police were looking for witnesses who had seen a gray vehicle driving near the bridge shortly before Irmgard's disappearance. Croiset was a literate man who read the press. Could he have read this note? We cannot prove it, but we cannot rule it out either. A simulation conducted by Logo 7 shows the following scenario. Croiset, possessing information from the newspapers, main theory, drowning, gray vehicle, uses logic and intuition to construct the most probable picture of what happened and presents it as a vision. He adds many vague details, some of which happen to coincide. When the body is indeed found in the river, everyone remembers only his hits, not his misses. The system's verdict. The Irmgard-Stelzel case is not irrefutable proof of clairvoyance. It can be explained with a high degree of probability by a combination of logical deduction, already known information, and the effect of confirmation bias. The unexplained becomes explainable. The second case. It is considered the gold standard in telepathy research, the so-called Ganzfeld experiments. Developed in the 1970s, they were designed to create ideal conditions for ESP to manifest. A subject, the receiver, is placed in a soundproof room. Halved ping-pong balls are placed over their eyes, and headphones playing white noise are placed over their ears. This creates a state of mild sensory deprivation, believed to be conducive to paranormal abilities. Meanwhile, in another room, a sender looks at a randomly selected picture or video clip and tries to mentally transmit that image to the receiver. After the session, the receiver is shown 4 images, one of which was the target, and asked to choose the one they believe was sent to them. The chance of a random guess is 25%. However, a meta-analysis of hundreds of such experiments conducted in different labs around the world showed a striking result. The average guessing rate was about 32%. It's not 100%, but it is a statistically significant deviation. The probability of this being mere coincidence is minuscule. For decades, these data were the main scientific argument for the existence of telepathy. We could not ignore this. Logo 7 gained access to databases with the results of thousands of individual Ganzfeld sessions. The system didn't just recalculate the average percentage, it began searching for hidden patterns and methodological flaws that could explain this anomaly, and it found them. The main problem the system identified was, once again, sensory leakage, albeit in a very subtle form. For example, if a video clip with sound was used as a target, the sender might speak louder, and these vibrations could be transmitted through the building structure. If the choice pictures were printed on the same printer, the target picture might have had barely perceptible flaws distinguishing it from the others. In some early experiments, the 4 choice pictures were not perfectly matched, and the target picture could stand out by style or content. But the most devastating blow came from the file drawer problem, which we already encountered with Rhine. Logo 7 found a strong correlation. Labs that obtained positive results were more likely to publish their research than those that got random results. When the system conducted a new meta-analysis, including not only published data, but also data from unpublished failed experiments, the overall result dropped from 32% to 26%. This is still slightly above chance, but now on the verge of statistical error. The system's verdict. The Ganzfeld experiments do not prove the existence of telepathy. They prove how incredibly difficult it is to create perfect conditions and how even the slightest flaws in a protocol can generate an anomaly that is easily mistaken for a miracle. The positive results are most likely an artifact of imperfect methodology and publication bias. The third case. This one is perhaps the most personal and the most difficult to analyze. It is the phenomenon of end-of-life experiences. Stories told by thousands of people. At the moment their loved one dies, often thousands of kilometers away, they suddenly experience something strange. They hear their voice, feel their touch, see their image, or they are simply overcome by a sudden, chilling feeling that something terrible has happened. Often, upon calling relatives, they learn that their loved one passed away at that exact moment. How can this be explained? There is no deceit or fraud here. These are deeply personal, sincere experiences. We loaded a database of several thousand such documented cases into Logos 7. The system had to find an answer without resorting to mysticism. The analysis revealed two key factors. The first is the psychology of memory. Imagine your elderly, sick relative is in the hospital. You are constantly worried about them. Over a week, you might experience dozens of sudden bouts of anxiety thinking, what if something has happened to them? In 99 of these instances, you dismiss the thought and nothing happens. But on one of those occasions, you do get a call with bad news. What will your brain do? It will instantly create a false cause and effect relationship. It will remember that single instance as prophetic and simply erase the other 99 false alarms from memory because they were insignificant. This is confirmation bias again, in its most powerful emotional form. The second factor is statistics. Logos 7 ran a calculation. Nearly 8 billion people live on the planet. About 170,000 people die every day. Each of these people has dozens of relatives and friends. This means that trillions of person-thought-event interactions occur every day. With such gigantic numbers, the appearance of incredible coincidences is not just possible. It is statistically inevitable. It wouldn't be a miracle if such stories happened. It would be a miracle if they didn't happen at all. The system's verdict, end-of-life experiences, are a powerful, real psychological phenomenon. But it's most likely a product of our own brain's workings, a play of memory, anxiety, and the law of large numbers. It is not a telepathic connection with the dying. It is a testament to our deep emotional bond with them. And so, the three last bastions have fallen. The Croisset case, the Ganzfeld experiments, end-of-life experiences. What seemed inexplicable, upon closer, colder, and more impartial examination, finds its rational explanation. We are finished. We have come the whole way, from beginning to end. We have left no stone unturned, and now we are ready to deliver the final verdict. In the last 10th chapter, we will bring together all the threads of our investigation. Based on the analysis of historical data, scientific experiments, psychological models, and financial reports, the Logos 7 system will provide the final, synthesized answer to the main question, do psychics exist? And this answer, in its simplicity and relentlessness, may change your view of the world forever. Chapter 10. The Final Verdict. We have reached our destination. For 9 chapters we have navigated this labyrinth, illuminating its darkest corners with the cold light of analysis. We began with the ghosts of the past, and the myths of great prophets turned to dust, revealing themselves as mere artistry of ambiguity. We entered the laboratories of miracles and found not a gift, but methodological flaws and the desperate self-deception of scientists. We dissected the arsenal of modern mediums, exposing the psychological tricks of cold reading and the cynical technologies of hot reading. We saw how a $1 million prize for half a century failed to find a single real candidate capable of proving their gift under conditions that excluded deceit. We delved into the architecture of our minds and understood that the very matrix of belief is hardwired into us by evolution, making us susceptible to illusions. We counted the money, and behind the hazy image of spirituality, the grimace of a multi-billion-dollar industry that preys on grief and hope became visible. And finally, with respect but without mercy, we examined the most unexplained cases, and even they, upon closer inspection, found their rational explanation. The journey was long. Now it is time to tie all the threads together. It is time for the final synthesis. The Logos 7 system has processed the entire data set collected during our investigation. Historical chronicles, scientific protocols, psychological models, economic reports, thousands of personal testimonies. All of it was weighed, compared, and analyzed. We did not ask the system if it believed. We asked it what the facts proved. And today, we are ready to announce its verdict. Final, impartial, and based solely on the data. So the main question, do psychics exist? Do people exist who can systematically, provably, and under controlled experimental conditions, obtain information through paranormal means, violating the known laws of physics? The answer from the Logos 7 system consists of a single word. No. Let me repeat that. Based on an analysis of the entire body of information available to humanity, from ancient texts to modern scientific research, the Logos 7 system has found not a single irrefutable, statistically significant, and reproducible piece of evidence for the existence of extrasensory perception as a real, objective phenomenon. Not one. Everything we mistake for ESP is, in fact, an aggregate of other perfectly explainable phenomena. Let's list them one more time. This is our final list. The true superpowers we discovered during our investigation. First, the art of observation and logic. Many psychics are simply brilliant, though not always honest psychologists. They masterfully read body language, catch the subtlest nuances of voice, and make accurate logical deductions based on appearance and manner of speech. Their gift is not in a third eye, but in an incredibly developed attention to detail. Second, techniques of manipulation. This is cold and hot reading. It is not mysticism, but technology. A technology for extracting information from a person or from open sources and selling it back to them disguised as a divine revelation. It is a cynical craft, perfected over time. Third, statistical coincidence. In a world where billions of events happen every second, incredible coincidences are not just possible, they are inevitable. Our brain, programmed to find patterns, snatches these random hits and elevates them to the status of a miracle, ignoring millions of misses. Fourth, cognitive biases. This is our own matrix of belief. Confirmation bias, apophenia, the need for control. We are not just passive observers. We are active participants in the deception. We build the illusion ourselves and desperately want to believe in it because it gives us comfort and order in a chaotic world. Fifth, outright deceit and fraud. Yes, behind many famous names and television shows lies not delusion, but cold calculation. Planted audience members, information gathered in advance, collusion with editors. This is not magic. It is a crime. These are the 5 true pillars upon which the entire phenomenon of psychics rests. Observation, manipulation, coincidence, self-deception, and fraud. Nothing supernatural. Nothing paranormal. But does this mean that everything you have ever felt is a lie? Does it mean that the inexplicable connection you feel with your loved ones is just a game of chemical reactions in your brain? No. And this is perhaps the most important conclusion of our investigation. Logos 7 conducted one final analysis. The system compared data on belief in the paranormal with data on people's psychological states, and it found a striking correlation. Belief in psychics is not a sign of foolishness. It is a symptom of deep, unmet human needs. When conventional medicine says, "We've done everything we can," a person goes to a healer, not because they believe in magic, but because they are searching for gestaceous hope. When a psychologist offers years of therapy to cope with grief, a person goes to a medium not because they believe in spirits, but because they are searching for quick comfort and forgiveness. When the world seems unjust and chaotic, a person goes to a fortune teller not because they believe in predictions, but because they are searching for meaning and the illusion of control. The psychic industry is a giant market that doesn't sell miracles. It sells surrogates. A surrogate for hope. A surrogate for comfort. A surrogate for meaning. And it will continue to thrive as long as science, medicine, and society fail to meet these fundamental human needs as effectively as the fraudsters do. So what should we do with this knowledge? Become disillusioned with the world and people? Become cynics? No. The verdict of the Logos 7 system is not a condemnation. It is a liberation. It is a liberation from the fear imposed on us by those who diagnose curses and the evil eye. A liberation from the false guilt cultivated by mediums who hint that you could have done something. A liberation from the power of random coincidences and dark predictions. To accept the fact that the world is governed by the laws of physics and probability, not the whims of spirits, is to take back responsibility for your own life. It means understanding that your future is created by your choices, not the alignment of the planets. That your successes are the result of your hard work, not a lifted curse. That you can cope with grief by relying on the support of the living, not the whispers of the dead. The miracles we so desperately seek outside ourselves have always been within us. The human body's capacity for regeneration is a miracle far more real than energy healing. The power of empathy and the support of a loved one is a magic far more potent than any love spell. The might of the human intellect, which has allowed us to decode the genome, fly to the stars, and create artificial intelligence. That is true clairvoyance. Our investigation is complete. We did not find a single psychic, but perhaps we found something more important. An understanding that the greatest mystery and the most incredible power in the universe is not paranormal ability. It is the human mind, its weaknesses, its greatness, and its boundless capacity for both self-deception and the discovery of truth. The choice of what to believe always remains yours. We have only provided you with the facts, impartial, verified, and analyzed by the most powerful system available to us. What you do with these facts is up to you.